Hello, welcome to another Sunday Property Breakfast podcast special. Today we're talking about staging, showcasing, and basically making your home look the very best it can when we come to sell it for you. And it's something that I've always believed in from the moment I set up the business. And it's something that, as a Keller Williams agent, is sort of part of the culture of the company, an American business originally, and this is just commonplace within the industry, although it's still pretty new over here, starting to get a little bit more popularity. So that's what we're going to talk about. And I've got somebody with me who's worked on a number of projects and is an interior designer in Hartley Whitney. I'd like to introduce Karen Chapman from Renaissance Interiors. Karen, welcome.
Thank you very much, Adrian. Nice to be here.
Yeah, pleasure. And we're back in the Cavern Beatles room as well, which is always good fun. So we'll talk about staging and presenting and doing the best we can to showcase a house, but probably to put that in perspective of your ability to do that, tell me a little bit about Renaissance. I know you quite well, but tell everybody about what you do at Renaissance Interiors.
Oh, thanks, Adrian. At Renaissance Interiors, we're now in Hartley Whitney High Street, where people can find us. But we are a team of very enthusiastic interior designers who want to make people love their houses and have a lifestyle within their house that reflects who they are. So what we like to do is have a conversation with families, couples, to find out what lifestyle they want, what they want to achieve, and then build the interiors that's going to make that possible. Quite often, if people are, particularly if they're going to build a house, if they're lucky enough to actually build that dream house, the first place they go is an architect. And they talk to the architect and they talk about the number of bathrooms and bedrooms and all those sort of tick list things. But they don't talk about the lifestyle they're trying to create. So they get the count of bathrooms, bedrooms, kitchen and all those things, but the lifestyle's not built in. So what we would recommend is when you talk to the architect, work with an interior designer as well. You then get the interior design element, because interior design is far more than wallpaper colours and fabrics and things like that. Interior design is about the flow of the building. Lighting design, it's about making the function of the house work as well as the whole building flow to allow your lifestyle that you want to create to work for you. So by working with an interior designer who's going to understand the lifestyle, then at the same time work with the architect, or they'll work together as a team so that you get the whole 360-degree service. Because quite often what happens is the architect does their thing, then it moves on to a contractor. They do their thing. And then at the end of the process, they think, oh, we might get a little bit of help from somebody like us.
Because they don't actually understand what you're doing.
No, exactly. And so they then think about the superficial add-ons like colours and furniture and stuff. But actually think about that at the beginning, not the colours specifically, but about the flow. So you look at the practical side of life, how many people are in the family, the ages of children, are you going to have older parents coming to live with you? How long are you planning to be in that house? Is it your forever home? Which then obviously if it is your forever home, you have to think about how your lifestyle, your children, family is going to change, the dynamic is going to change, and future-proof it.
It's interesting because I think there's quite a lot of misconception about what I do for a living in terms of the things that you really have to deal with, as opposed to the more enjoyable side of things, which is the marketing and presentation of a property, which is actually the nice bit. All the other bits are quite involved and quite difficult at times. It's interesting that I asked you that question, and the very first thing you started to talk about wasn't a swatch of fabric from Chelsea Harbour, where I used to work, which I'm sure if you walk down Chelsea Harbour, you'd probably absolutely love wandering into the design centre. But the first thing you talked about was people and flow and how the house is going to be used before you even started to talk about sofas and fabrics. So interesting that I don't think people fully appreciate the role of an interior designer within a property.
Absolutely, yeah.
As an owner, getting a big extension or even building your house, you were delighted probably, A, to get the planning for it, secondly, to have found somebody who's going to build it for you, and it's only the afterthought of, oh, I wonder what furniture we're going to put in here, as opposed to really designing the house. There's a couple of things we talked about once before, was lighting, And that doesn't mean physically. I'm trying to remember the phrase you use for spotlights.
Ceiling acne.
Ceiling acne, which is just, yeah, I did remember it, but I wanted you to say the words. Um, I've owned houses with ceiling acne where you think, and you never use them. You then try them with a dimmer switch and you still think, no, I've just got this no atmospheric lighting. And the other one you talked about with these big open plan spaces that people have created was electric sockets.
Yeah.
And do you want to explain that
Yeah.
point to me?
Yes, absolutely. So there is a movement at the moment and a big, quite often the extensions and the changes that people are having architecturally are having these big, great rooms. So you've got the kitchen, a snug area, and your dining space all in one big room, potentially with bifold doors looking out into your garden, which we consider an outdoor room. So never neglect the design at the back door. But the thing to remember about that is that these spaces are vast. You've got 3 rooms in one and no walls. So if you're planning, if you plan ahead, you're ahead of the curve. If you don't plan ahead, what will happen is you'll have all of the wall sockets on the perimeter of the room, and then you're going to create 3 islands of space. Obviously, the kitchen will be against a wall, and then you've got a dining space, and you'll have a living space. And then, but actually, you don't want everything shoved to the edges of the wall so that the lamps can be plugged into the sockets. The chances are you're going to bring those spaces into the room. So you've got little island clusters. But the last thing you want to do, particularly with small children, is to have a lamp plugged into a wall socket, and then potential trip hazards. So if you plan that space ahead, you can build in the floor sockets so that the floor sockets are under a sofa, so that they're not there to be a trip hazard. But that's something you have to plan for, because you have to know
and
where
it's
the
not cost. It's pre-planning.
Exactly.
Okay, there's probably a minor increase in cost to put a floor socket in as opposed to in a wall. But I can just imagine it now that the architect builder says, I've got 20 double sockets in your big open plan room at the back. You think, that's great, that's enough. But if they're in the wrong place and not in the floor.
Exactly.
I think that's, to me, a really good, simple illustration. You could probably give me another 20, but I think to me that's a very simple illustration of something that is about thought and pre-planning as opposed to the cost of involvement. And in terms of the interior design you do, from my understanding, you will do everything from something quite small right through to major projects. And
absolutely, we do. We like to help as many people as we can, and we have a variety of different services that can help everybody and anybody. So there's 3 kind of main areas to what we do. So if somebody just wants a blind for their bathroom, we can make them a blind for their bathroom. There's no obligation to buy bigger and go bigger if that's all they want. So we have curtain makers and an in-house workroom team who can make you bespoke curtains, blinds, upholstery and all that sort of stuff. So if that's all you need and that's all you want, that's fine. And we have an extensive fabric library at the studio in Hartley Wintney where you can come and look at it, or we can curate you a collection of samples for you to view as well. Then again, people obviously move forward with their interiors and they just want to refresh. So if they don't want to move walls or doors or windows or extend, and they just say, my sitting room's a bit tired, I want a new look, can you help? Yes, of course we can. We can design it for them to source the products themselves, but we do a fully curated service where we will design it in 2D or 3D with mood boards and samples, and then we can buy the products for them. We can project manage the whole thing. They can go to work and come back and it's all done and dusted. And that's what a lot of people want, because they don't have the time to do it. They go off and do what they're good at, and they leave us to do what we're good at. We have the big red bow on the door and they come back and they've got this wonderful unveiling of this wonderful new room.
Wouldn't life be simple if everybody allowed somebody who knows what they're doing to do that, rather than everybody interfering? And I do genuinely think that a lot of what you do, a lot of people think they can do it. And that's probably you're one of your biggest stumbling blocks to ruling the world and having world domination, because I think a lot of people think they're pretty good at it. And there are some people who have a flair for things, but they still wouldn't think about floor sockets in a big open plan room. So.
Yeah, and over the last, I don't know, probably 20 years or so, since programs such as Changing Rooms for anybody over 40 would remember, was when interior design became accessible to the masses. Before then, people just thought of interior designers working with the rich and the famous. But
Chelsea Harbour again.
Exactly. Changing rooms and programs such as that, 60-minute makeover, they make interior design accessible to everybody. And obviously with things like Pinterest, where it's all out there and you can basically scrapbook digitally now.
Yes.
So you can get lots of inspiration, and people take those ideas and do them themselves or source products themselves. And obviously the internet is very rich with being able to do that. And that's absolutely fine, but there's an element of too much, and it's knowing how to balance the space, the negative space, make sure it physically works, not just throwing everything in the kitchen sink at it. And yeah, I mean, yes, if you want to do it yourself, crack on, but if you want support, we're there to support you.
Have you rescued a few people halfway through a project?
Yes.
Yeah,
we have. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. That's probably a difficult call for them to make, but there's probably been a few internal arguments about that one. So I would have no hesitation whatsoever in recommending Karen, if you've got an interior design project, small, medium, large, whatever. Showcasing, styling, doing the best we can to present a property for sale. For me, it's a no-brainer. It's partly my new homes background. Developers still have show houses. In this old-fashioned world, they had them in the late 80s, early 90s when I first started working in the business. They still do them now. Most other things have changed. They still have show houses, and they do it for a very, very good reason. Why do you think more agents in this country don't have this as one of the obvious things that they must do with new instruction of, we will look at what we can do with its presentation and showcasing and styling?
I think there's an element of laziness in there, because there's a huge demand for new properties, and so it's just go in with your iPhone, take a few quick pics. And so often I look at property pictures and they haven't put the loo seat down, or all the cleaning products are in the view, and it's like, it's just basic. Make the bed, put the loo seat down, hide the toilet duck and all things like that. And it's just laziness. It's the bing bang bosh kind of approach. And unfortunately, people are leaving money on the table by doing that, because they're just appealing to the lowest, let's just sell it quickly. But just by taking some care and looking at the lifestyle side of it, and that's where the show home element differs, because when you go to a show home, they're not looking at the practical, they're looking at that selling the lifestyle. So you'll notice that in a lot of bedrooms, that if they don't have built-in wardrobes, they don't put wardrobes in there, because they try and create this idea of lots of space and it's all beautifully styled, because they're selling a lifestyle
They
dream.
don't tend to put TVs in lounges, do they?
Well, they know exactly, and also it's they're looking at it's that lifestyle, rather than we're just going to slob on the couch and watch TV all day, and it's trying to sell a dream, whereas the non sort of bespoke estate agency that you offer, when they're just selling it quickly, they're missing a trick really, because people are just ticking boxes of bathrooms and bedrooms, rather than saying, this is a lifestyle you can achieve in your new home, and selling the dream. And show homes are selling the dream, but you don't look at the practical, because then there's nowhere to put your clothes, because the wardrobes aren't there. And most of the furniture is small size, so the beds are probably the smallest you can get.
Exactly.
Or not even proper beds. They're not actual proper mattresses. It's a block covered in a nice bit of bedding.
And although that's the new homes angle, you're dealing with houses which actually are more practical, because the beds are the right size, and they have got wardrobes, and they have got bedside tables. You're just making that space work, and it's a lot more than decluttering. It's a lot more than just hiding the toilet duck. And because I've seen it in action, we'll talk about a couple of projects we've worked on very specifically. But the way I look at it is the average house value, and I don't like talking averages, but if you said the average house value where we are and where I run the business is around 500, 600,000. If you'd made 1% of a difference to the value of the property through a little bit of thought, better photography, which is more my side than what you do, though you help the photographers, that's £5,000 or £6,000. I think right in the market we're in at the moment, and probably going to be in for the next 12 months or so, it's not a question of I got a little bit more money, it's I found a buyer. Because at the moment, found one, full stop, because at the moment there's quite a lot of property that is just sat there.
Yeah.
Other things are coming on and going quite quickly. There's a lot that's sat there. The projects we've done, again, as with the interior design, we've done small, medium and large. Probably the smallest project we worked on was a little house called Quebec Gardens in Blackwater.
Yeah.
The scenario of that was standard, straightforward, 3-bedroom, semi-detached house. Lady was moving to a retirement home. What did you do there, and how long did we spend get that house sorted?
That was quite a quick one. That was literally turned up on the day of the photography, dressed the space, as the lady and her husband had lived there for some time, and they were older. They hadn't modernised, and it was a property that was peak to be moved into by a family, but they would need to modernise quite a lot. So it was just presenting it in a way that shows that potential. So we just moved a few things around, dressed the space, to just make people look beyond what's there and look at the possibilities.
Yes. And she hadn't actually lived in that house very long, because I think she'd only been there 12, 13 years, where often we're looking at somebody who's been there 30 years. And it wasn't too cluttered, but there was still an element of stuff,
Yes.
which was clogging up. And I just remember going back to see it when we were doing the photos and thought, that's a simple project. We didn't repaint anything, certainly didn't put a new kitchen or new carpets. And the people who bought it were exactly as we expected. They saw the space, they knew they were going to have to do it up. Young family, loved it. The other one I always remember I really enjoyed was, because I thought it was more of a lifestyle showcase, was White Cottage.
Yes.
In Phoenix Green in Hartley Whitney. Lovely house.
Beautiful house.
But again, wasn't perfect when I first went to see it and went with the owner. Suggested he talks to you and he says, I already know Karen, so that's a no-brainer. Get her in. And what did you do there? What did we do there to make that one work?
White Cottage is such a pretty cottage. Again, that was just setting up like you were doing a magazine shoot, that you were just trying to showcase the best that it could be. And the homeowners' children had moved out, and so there was a lot of teenage detritus and lifestyle from kind of before, and the space was a little bit overwhelmed in places, so we chose a few key areas. And the thing about staging is it's like a movie trailer, really. Or you're not trying to sell from staging, we're trying to pique the interest, like you do with a film trailer, to say, this is worth your attention, come and have a closer look. And that's when the baton then passes to you to then talk about and show the people the potential within the space. And that's the power of staging. It's getting that magazine interest. Look at this beautiful...
And that's how it looked.
Yeah, it did.
And knowing the nuts and bolts of the house as I did, I'm not suggesting that we... completely covered up the fact that it needed a bit of work, because those who are interested then look behind the staging elements and know what they needed to do. But we got people into the house in the first place, and I know it was a mad time of selling, and we had a full Saturday and Sunday of 15 viewings each day, and I was hoarse by the Sunday night and the Saturday night for that matter. And I know it was extreme then, but I do genuinely believe if we did the same thing today with that house, even though the market's a bit more normal, we would still get double the amount of interest. And what you do with this, with the staging, is very similar to what we do with our videos, property videos. We don't film the fourth small bedroom, 8 foot by 6 foot. We film the key rooms, which actually can often be hallways, funny enough, and entrances and the bigger spaces, to say to people, come and have a look at the rest of it, not show the whole thing. So I like that idea of the movie trailer. Probably my favourite one, Bears Barn, a house that, if I had, about 8 kids and a massive family, I'd have bought. Stunning house, but it was, again, unloved because of the situation of the owners. And I think with that one, you particularly didn't just do the physical elements of the staging, but also really helped the owner. Could you perhaps explain how much you put into that one? Because that was a lot of work.
Yeah, that took a little bit longer because there was I think overwhelm probably summed up that overwhelm from the homeowner, wanting to obviously present it so well, but the situation of everything was just so overwhelming. The space was physically overwhelmed as well with just stuff and more stuff. So it was a matter of we're on that approach. We went round with the homeowner, and they were very keen to write down everything we said. So we basically gave them a crib sheet. Right, do this in this room, do this in this room, and they tackled a lot of it themselves. But on the day of the photo shoot, we then took it the next stage further. So we moved some furniture around from room to room because the space wasn't presenting properly, and the balance of the furniture wasn't right. So we moved some furniture from room to room to make it the balance and the presentation look a lot better. And we bought a few bits of dressing in, but actually we just used everything, most of it, 99% of it was from the home itself, to show the character of the home and how it could be, because it was absolutely a diamond in the rough, really. And it was a beautiful space. I'd be quite happy to live there. It's a dreamy place to be. And it was just a matter of saying this is what it could be, and highlighting some of the really pretty architectural features, and showing the dream that could be there, not the overwhelming situation that was there at the time.
I remember two things with the client, in fact, three, particularly on that one. I remember the first look she gave me when I told her we have a solution for her being, she's desperately wanting to sell and feeling that the house was a mess. They tidied it up a bit for the previous photos with the previous agent, and obviously she'd gone back to living there, and she didn't move back in, but carried on living, and then it became a mess again. I remember her face when I said, I've got a solution for this, for somebody who will organise you. I remember then watching her go round with you, and she was like a child in the nicest sense of the way, just saying, writing down this list. You were putting it together for her, but she was writing it down as well. And then I remember her comments when it was all done, and it was like, this house has never looked this good. Why couldn't we do this? And why couldn't we have had this as our house before? And those are special moments for me. But again, all comes down to what we do for a living, what you do in terms of the staging, but it comes back to this thing of it's the impact it has on people.
Yeah.
And the buyer loved it.
Yeah.
I know, is already adapting some of the space and changing it. And it's a house that will be just a really cracking house.
Yeah, and we offer different solutions. So if people have the time to do it themselves, we can show them exactly what we did, what needs to be done. Or if they don't have the time, the inclination, or the ability, we can do it for them. But there was another one we did in Winchfield where they required a very quick turnaround because they needed to move to Scotland for work, and there was a time constraint on that. And again, their house was overwhelmed.
Oh, yes.
So we went in, and there was a lot of stuff to deal with. So for speed, what we did was I went room by room with them. They didn't follow me around on this occasion. So I went around room by room, took loads of photographs. We then put that in like a PowerPoint presentation with instructions, essentially say, right, take this element and move it here and do this and do that. So by the day of the shoot, again, they'd done a lot of the work. And on the day of the shoot, then we did those final tweaks, moved a bit of furniture around, dressed the space, made the beds, hid the toilet duct, and did all of that sort of stuff again to show it. And when they saw the photographs, they said, if only this house had looked like this, we would have enjoyed that house more. Because it's just, it's often having somebody who doesn't live there to see the space in a different way, which is what interior designers do, because we're detached from it, but we ask the right questions, and we can then extract the relevant information. And obviously, if you're living in the space and you're doing up a house to live in, slightly different, because when you're moving, you have to detach yourself. So if we say something needs to move or go, don't take it personally. All we're trying to do
I have that conversation all the time with people.
All we're trying to do is make that magazine appeal, that movie trailer thing, because we're selling a dream, we're not selling that particular item. And so it's just a matter of, okay, you're selling your house, you want to do the best you can, get the best revenue for it in the best time, because time costs money and delays will cost them money. So let's just focus on what we do. And because you're detaching yourself and you're emotionally moving into another space, you've got to start packing anyway. So why not use that staging time to then extract some of the stuff you want to take and do all of that? Because what you want to be focusing on is your future, not where you are now. Yeah. This is a means to an end. So that's something it's one of those things you just got to have that emotional disconnect, which you have anyway, but it's just going, okay, this now is the time.
Yeah. And I can see that objective viewpoint that you have is great for the staging, but actually is really good for the main interior design business you have as well, because you are not emotionally attached to that sofa, or the way they have happened to lay it out. What they've done doesn't work, and you can tell them why it's better.
Absolutely. And the other thing about when we're doing interior design for people who actually, they want to improve the house they're in, one of the first things that we talk about is what are their cherished things? Do they have furniture or a painting or whatever? Because that's their story. Yeah. So if we then craft a design inspired by something that means something to them, that's what's unique about their home, as opposed to just going into a shop and just buying the look. Let's just buy this whole room setup, because anyone can have that. But what we want to do is create something unique to them. For them. And we're creating the next chapter to their story, not just the same as everybody else.
Brilliant. Karen, thank you for that. That's a really good insight into what we do on the staging side, but I think a really useful insight on interior design as well. So anybody listening from the selling and estate agency point of view, if you have not really thought about this and you are at some stage thinking of selling your house, if you're thinking of doing it next week, we can certainly get involved and we can start looking to stage the property for you. But I think the other key thing is, if you are thinking that it's next year or even the year after, it's never too early to think about what you're going to do to present that space in the best possible way. We've talked about interiors today. Garden is another one, which is a really, really important space. And you can't very often accelerate nature. So if you're thinking of selling next year, you need to do today what you're going to do, which will have a benefit in spring next year. So, but I think from the internals, sometimes we go in quickly. I'd forgotten that last example of the Winchfield house. That was really quick. They were trying to move to Scotland, and Scotland, they have to be in a proceedable position to buy. So everything was done very quickly. But do you know what? When you set a deadline, it's amazing how much you can get done in a short period of time.
Absolutely.
But if you've got more time to lead in on it, then all the better. I hope that's been of interest to you on interior design, but also on styling and staging. Karen, thank you again for joining me, and we'll meet up again soon at the property somewhere, someday. Thanks again.
Adrian.
Hi everyone, Supergirl here, and I am a super fan of SMJ Media Group. They provide support for local businesses, charities and events, and of course create fun content for all of you. If you enjoy our content and would like to help support us, please go to buymeacoffee.com/SMJ Media Group and buy us a coffee.